Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some more RTD News updates. And as you can tell from today's title, Congress is coming after your 401k. America's pension crisis is getting worse. I'm going to be covering several different articles, all dealing with the ongoing pension crisis we're experiencing here in America and what is to come. And so we're only 4 days into the new year, and already we have news about countries deciding to remove themselves or rethink the dollar, or aka dump the dollar. President Erdogan in Turkey tells his citizens in order to help the country out, it'd be in your best interest to go under your pillow, grab the dollars, the euros, and gold. And as you tell from today's title, how the baby boomers will lose their retirement nest egg, I want to share with you a couple thoughts as well as some articles on how the next market correction will be catastrophic for a lot of people. Always cash crisis worse. About Venezuela once again. Systemic important banks. They removed the 1,000 called monetary awareness. All right, we are connected midday for an RTD News update. Came across a lot of interesting subject matter that I thought I would just share my 2 cents on, and ran a little bit, so won't be long, but just wanted to highlight a couple things worth bringing to your attention and how what's happening in Canada could possibly parallel what could be coming here in the U.S. In the not too distant future. And so hope everyone's doing well, as always. Streaming live for a moment. If you don't mind the chat, let me know where you're watching from. If you're tuning in, hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can be notified. And anyway, let's jump right in. So within the last 24 hours, bank runs, the term bank run rather, has been trending heavily, and just jump right into it. And so I just typed in bank run on Twitter, and this is a interesting picture from 56 minutes ago of some gentleman named Patrick. Not sure, know nothing about him, but it looks like he's at an ATM machine and he's withdrawing some Canadian dollars. So that's a sign as to what's happening up in that region there. Then, of course, as you go throughout just this upcoming trend, it just looks like bank runs is getting a lot of attention. So let's jump into an article that was released a couple hours ago from Zero Hedge. And it says, bank run, Canada's top banks mysteriously go offline. And so within the last 48 hours, in response to Trudeau's Monday's announcement on freezing bank accounts for people who participate in the protest. And of course, a lot of buzzwords has been given to us. And what the first thing that came to my mind was that event occurring right now in Canada can easily be used on the home front here in the U.S. when it comes to the most recent announcement, rather, of the domestic terrorism list and criteria for what would make up that. But anyway, just a quick run as to what's going on and how this stuff is worth paying attention to. So it says here, days after Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he would invoke emergency orders to crack down on demonstrators by freezing their bank accounts, 5 major Canadian banks went offline on Wednesday night as customers reported their funds were unavailable, according to a technology website, Bleeping Computer. It says the Royal Bank of Canada, Bank of Montreal, Scotia Bank, TD Bank Canada, and the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce were all hit with an unexplainable outage on Wednesday. And so how exactly do you begin to try to explain that? You don't. We're in very rough times right now, and there's a lot of pressure being put on the governments because they have overstepped their boundaries, and there's a pushback. There's a resistance underway. And so the power outages of the top 5 banks, how would you explain that? It was a coordinated exercise, warm up, or just an event to basically prepare the depositors for what's possibly coming. And then that plays into all the cyber polygon stuff as well that's unfolding in the same time. But when you have the 5 top banks go out at the same time, it's definitely not a coincidence. And so it's either a response out of concern and fear from the financial institutions up there, or a last minute scramble to try to pull off something in case it gets bad. They want to test and see if they have the capabilities of actually trying to disconnect citizens from their funds if they needed to, due to the concerns of bank runs. And so I'm assuming since now things have died down a little bit, but the trend or term hashtag bank run is still trending. And so here's just a couple more things from this article here. Let me get it up here real quick. And as always, for those tuning in, just trying to do something a little bit different and get to some news articles right away. But that right there was a dud. Keep it moving. Anyway, so if you look at something on Google Trends, as you guys can see, within the last couple of days, and it's coming down a little bit, but the term bank run is still continuing to, grow. It still tends to get people's interest. So that's just something worth also paying attention to. Keep it moving. And what to continue this on further, what caught my attention was another article. Where is it? Let me grab this article real quick. That's not it. Give me 1 second here. It's the difference between when you're streaming live, you tend to lose a couple things in the last minute. But anyway, here is an article that just shines more light on the process of freezing banks. It says banks are moving to freeze accounts linked to convoy protests. Here are what you need to know. So it goes through all the snippets in regards to the Emergencies Act. But there's a lot of similarities. And let me just jump to that real quick. The Emergencies Act, which was invoked in Canada, it basically puts the government in a position to do things to protect themselves in disguise as protecting the people. But here in the U.S., we also have had emergency acts that were put into place to protect the stability of our financial system and things like that. And let me just jump on that real quick. But here is that article that I was trying to get to. I'm all over the place, but hopefully bear with me. It'll hopefully give you something to chew on as far as just how to process this. But this is an article that came out just not too long ago. It says banks get protesters' names as Canada financial squeeze unfolds. So the Canadian financial squeeze is underway. So if you just look through this real quick, simply put, Canadians National Police Service is sending to banks the names of people involved in protests that have paralyzed the nation's capital. Look at it, painting this out to be a dark, doom and gloom type of scenario. A first concrete step in the financial crackdown on demonstrators. So, mind you, that word demonstrators is the nice way of them trying to paint concerned citizens over the government tyranny in a way that makes it seem like it's politically correct right now. But that word demonstrators, in my opinion, will turn into possibly, in the next couple of days, weeks, if that spillover happens here in the U.S., is going to turn into the domestic terrorism, because it just lines up hand in hand as to how they're going to paint people who oppose this crackdown on our freedoms. But anyway, it gives more bank. It says it's Canadian Banks Association confirmed the Royal Canadian Mounted Police has provided a list to the banks. The banks are seeking clarity from law enforcement on how to handle the alleged protesters' accounts, according to people familiar with the matter. It says, but Financial Minister Freeland said some accounts have already been frozen. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government invoked an emergency act on Monday, try to end protests that have occupied the streets. Says the emergency order require virtually every participant in the Canadian financial system, banks, investment, credit unions, loan companies, security lenders, fundraising platforms, payments, and clearing services to determine whether they possess or control property of a person who's attending. So just simply being out in the streets and showing support for the demonstrators could put you on a quote unquote domestic demonstration, terrorist list at some point in the future, because it's an illegal protest providing supplies to demonstrators. Says if they find such a person in the customer list, they must freeze their accounts and report it to the RCMP or the Canada's intelligence services, the regulators say. Any suspicious transactions must also be reported to the country's anti-money laundering agency known as FinTrack. And so right there, not only will they have to report it, but then they also have to basically lump this in with the anti-money laundering agencies. And so what I want to say with that is simply, the Emergencies Act that has been enacted in Canada, it parallels the same the same authority given to our government figures here, as well as our banking structure here, under the Patriots Act. And so let me jump right into that so I can bring it home for you guys to see. So if you look at, let me pull this on the screen right here. If you look at the U.S. Department of Treasury. This is a fact sheet overview of Section 311. Let me go back here and zoom in some. Overview of Section 311 of the U.S. Patriot Act. And this was in 2011, February 10th, 2011. So that's was about 11 years ago. 11 years ago to this very month, this was an updated overview of the Patriot Act. And so if you just scroll down to the background, it says the U.S. Patriot Act was signed into law October 26, 2001. Says taken as a whole section of whatever, the secretary with a range of options that can be adapted to target specific money laundering and terrorist financing risks most effectively. So ultimately, I just mentioned that as a part of this Emergencies Act in Canada, they're using the terminology anti-money laundering and terrorist financing. So the framework has been set for the escalation of the consumers' bank accounts to be frozen. And if the spillover happens here in the U.S., which more than likely it will happen, the Patriot Act is already in play. It's been operational for the last 21 years. To my knowledge, nothing has changed with it. And so as of now, the Treasury, as well as all the banks, they have the ability at the drop of a dime. So any minute now, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, amongst all her other, constituents and whoever, could flip a switch and say that, because the majority of the support to the Canadians right now appear to be coming from the U.S. So all Trudeau has to say is, just like Biden early in the week mentioned to Trudeau to crack down more. If those two, World Economic Forum, partners, if they come together and say, hey, majority of the funding comes from the U.S., we need you to crack down on the support coming from the U.S., and they can easily say you're funding. So American citizens are funding upheaval in another country, i.e. that's terrorist financing, because if the government feels that they're being terrorized by just their own population, it makes it a no-brainer for the U.S. to say something like, any U.S. citizen caught sending funds via, GoFundMe or even cryptocurrencies, because exchanges, of course, if most people buy cryptocurrencies from the exchanges, so it's all track and traceable right back to you. So through crypto exchanges as well as the banks here, if you're caught funding, whether it be through PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, any of that, if it's backtracked to you, you could fall into the category of being considered a domestic terrorist just because the framework has already been set. And then this goes back to the bulletin that came out 2 weeks ago, February 7th, on the summary of the terrorism threat to the U.S. homeland. And if you just go through all the many bullets here, somehow, some way, believe me, when it comes to financing, pushback against the government's crackdown on the people, it falls within this category for sure. So this is what's happening. Thought I would just share my 2 cents on this, bring it to your attention. But all the information is out there. The framework has been laid out. The narrative of the demonstrating will could easily turn into domestic terrorism. And the framework has already been set here in the U.S. utilizing the Patriot Act. So pretty much the ball's in their court to see what they want to do. Now it's a matter of whether or not the people wake up in time to continue to push back and, resist as much as you can. But anyway, want to check in real quick, share my 2 cents. I see a lot of thoughts in the chat. Let's, save those thoughts and whatnot for the live stream and bring it to the table. Do some research, grab some more articles and facts and send it to me, whatever. But anyway, if you've enjoyed this, hit the thumbs up button, show your support for the channel, and be back at it at 4 p.m. And I might try to do more of these little quick synopses, share my 2 cents on it, get your take. But once again, just bringing you the news. Hope all is well. Be blessed.
The next recession.
Recession will be a recession.
We're going to hit a recession.
The date of the next recession.
A U.S.-only recession typically lasts 8 to 10 months.
A crash is coming. Now, whether it's 6 months from now, 12 months, 36 months, no one knows.
If you have the right plan to set up, you can make a lot of money from this.